it's a Sherlock Holmes kind of process
Mm,
because um, you you have to work at putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. And one of the conclusions that Sherlock Holmes, the character used, or Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the writer, one of the um, conclusions that he used was that um, when you remove everything that is impossible, when you
mhm,
remove from the situation everything that is impossible,
mhm.
whatever remains must be the truth,
True. Mhm,
however crazy it is. Whatever remains must be the truth. And that's kind of the process of um, trying to gather and get information. And I think that without without facts, we become entirely emotional states, and that's really volatile, or has a potential to be volatile if we can't handle ourselves.
mhm,
Um, because emotions are emotions are drivers of things because they're so flexible and so changing, and they just watch somebody observing a sports event and you see their emotions go
mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Right, and
Very.
that's understanding how little we are in control of that part of ourselves. And in order to have control, we require information, and basically facts. And it's interesting to me that what you were doing was looking, I think, for some way to have some control over what was happening to you. And your way of doing this was collecting data and collecting information. It's a very scientific method, right? I mean, that's what a
Mhm,
scientist does. A scientist looks at things, searches for information, gathers data, analyzes the data, and then forms conclusions based on the data, and then presents the data. Yeah,
mhm,
and so it's a very that's why I said I was impressed with the process, right? Because that's what a scientist would do. Yeah.
mhm.
Now it doesn't mean that uh, it doesn't mean good or bad. I'm not here to make a judgment on that, but it does show a great depth of understanding about what is required in order to find the truth. And that shows a great depth of understanding in what is required to move on and move forward, and to to challenge certain perspectives. And a lot of people in life, they step back when there's a challenge, and usually we need to step
Mhm.
forward. We need to step into the challenge. No, I say usually, not all the time, because each situation is slightly different. And when someone says, "I've got a little boat and I'm going to row myself to America from Britain," it's like, well, be prepared to
Maybe not.
die. Okay, yeah, that's yeah, okay, yes, yes, it'll make a good book if you live, right? If so,
Yes, if yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yep. If you the that sounded like a wild animal. Sorry, that was in the background.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
checked. Yes, I see the cockatoo there.
Uh,
And then,
do you think that
well,
it? Sorry,
mhm, what's the question?
hmm, I'm not sure. I have a number of different questions. I'm not sure which question is is the best question. Um, what was hmm, hmm. what is it that makes you vulnerable to believing things that maybe are not actual or factual. Here's the example, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're very old stories and tales about vampires, right? And I use the vampire example because in the stories and tales about vampires, the vampire is not allowed to enter your home unless they have an invitation. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
similar things exist within our lives. That basically things are not allowed to enter our lives without some kind of invitation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is about the invitation. What is it within you that makes you vulnerable to invite this situation into your world? Because where you come from matters. It's a large construct of who we are. Now, I'm not saying that previous generations dictate the present generation. I'm not saying that, but where we come from matters. Um, that just for transparency, the women on my mother's side of the family are all batshit fucking crazy. Okay, they're all fucking crazy, right? But crazy in a way that crazy in a way that appears normal. Okay, because they conform to the standards and the norms of society, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're fantastic actors. Yeah, they play their roles very well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which probably means, yeah, trying to understand the whole picture, which probably means that if I had been a girl, then I would have picked up those habits and continued them. Um, because I was a boy, I was slightly the victim of those traits when I was a child, and I still carry some of that negativity, maybe a lot of it, with with me today. But I understand it, right? And that means that means that I can't change it, but I can manage it, which is important. And when you realize you can't change it, but you can manage it, and by managing it, that's being able to express to people exactly who we are. I'm like, I'm this because that happened. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm living with managing that part right now. So it's important for close friends and people around about me to let me know when they see those negative elements, so it keeps me in check. It helps me realize that, right, that's not me being me. That's the me carried over from previous generations, whether it's the language that I use, or my posture, or how I gesture with my hands, which are very often things that we pick up when we're very young. Um,
Yeah, yeah, we do.
you've
Can you
noted,
see something?
yeah,
Or he might. Yes,
yeah,
I do stand in front of a cook exactly the same way like my mom does. And when I do it, and when I realize, I'm just like, yeah, what can you do?
oh yeah, and this is where the management element comes in. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because um, what can you do is you can realize where that comes from, and you can. I don't think that it can be changed. It requires a lot of work. It depends how much time and effort people are prepared to put into those things. Again, the first element is to realize where where everything comes from, and the key point here is that it took you X many years to get to the point of asking people about those elements, those things, like, why did you do this? Where did this come from? And the reason why that's key for you now is because your parents failed massively, because your parents' job was to teach you that when you were young, so that you didn't have to teach yourself it when you're older, right? The same way that it's your parents' job to help you read when you're young. Otherwise, you have to learn to read yourself when you're older, and it's so much more difficult. Yeah. So it's just a different type of literature, but it's still learning. Yeah. And very often learning. And here's the crazy shit, right? Your parents will help you learn how to read so that you can read lots of shit that's not important, right? Rather than learning to read about yourself and who you are and where you come from. And they obviously couldn't self-analyze because they have their own fucked up shit that they can't deal with, right? And so they just, they wrap it up in paper and put a little bow on it and give it to you and say, here's our fucked up shit. Merry Christmas, right? And you unwrap it and it's a box of fucked up shit and you're like, oh, thank you so much. I love you too, right?
Right? Yes, exactly. It's like, yeah, but because it was wrapped up nicely, you think, oh, it's something good and special.
Yep. And this has been going on every year, like since forever, right? For you, it's forever, right? Because it's like since point zero. Yeah, and it even starts before zero because as you've realized, there's prenatal things that the baby in the womb is still listening to what's going on in the world around about, and who knows what even happens before that, right? So who knows how much information we have encoded in genetics, for example, about the programs of history and the people and who we are versus who we're supposed to be or who we even could be. It's a very complex question. But so the point I want to make is that at this point at which you begin to realize and gather this information, that's your real birth.
Yay!
Really, that's the real point of origin of who you are. Mm-hmm. Because until pieces of a puzzle again, right? Until we put the pieces of the puzzle together, we don't see the picture at all. So you've been looking at a frame with no picture for most of your life. Yeah. Trying to imagine what it is, and it could be anything. And the fact that it could be anything is very confusing because you're not.
It changed.
Yeah, it changes all the time, and you're not anything. You're you. You're something unique and specific. And that's why all the pieces need to be there in the puzzle. So, wow. You probably, because of those realizations, you probably see a parallel in your negative relationships with previous negative relationships of people in your family before. But does that answer the original question? The original question was, why do you allow people
to come into my life and do this?
Yes. If we can get closer to understanding that, then we get closer to preventing that happening again in the future. You don't want to go because you don't want to react against it, because to react against it is like to say, I just don't want to be involved with anyone. That's it. So no. See, you don't. On one side, you don't want to repeat the pattern. On the other side, you don't want to go completely in the opposite direction, because that's a form of extremism which is hurtful to the self. So, what is it that an inability to assess and a lack of accurate judgment, right? Now, we talked a little bit about self-assessment before. So an inability to assess is both internal and external. So it's assessing, who am I? What do I need? Yeah. This is the same way we can look at our body and realize that we need to eat different kinds of foods because we're not eating the right foods or whatever. We need that. So who am I, and what do I need? And are other people going to be able to provide that? And the skill is called discernment. Discernment is this is crazy for me because fundamental skills that should be taught from the beginning of life, and like you mention this to people and people have like never heard of them ever, right?
No.
Discernment, the
Mm-hmm.
ability to realize A, what is true, and B, what is right. Yeah. And the truth helps us discover what is right, because the truth is the foundation of everything. Yeah. And this is why lies are so destructive, because lies can only be maintained by lies. So the lie always leads to another lie, but the truth always leads to another truth. And that's why the truth is so addictive to people who are looking for it. That's why you need more information, because it's like, okay, wow, right, and it's a hard path. It's a hard path to go down because it involves self-assessment. Because the truth is nobody fucks our lives up more than we fuck our lives up for ourselves, right? And because here's my example. Past relationships that I've had that have not worked out have been because I put myself in that position. Yeah, I allowed myself to be vulnerable about certain things because maybe I didn't have any boundaries.
Uh-huh.
Or I didn't know which boundaries were the right boundaries.
The right boundaries for you were looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a great speech online. I have to find it somewhere where somebody's talking about there's a preacher in a church, and he's talking about the list. And the list is all the questions that you have to ask on your first date with somebody. Yeah. Because people tend to always be looking for the positive elements. Naturally, okay? Look, in essence, inside you're a positive person looking for the positive things. It's natural. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why you get into the shit of the relationships, because you're focusing on the positive rather than negative. Yeah. And there's nothing really wrong with that, except the negative is important.
Right.
Yeah, you're only
the negative is important as to in which way to keep the balance, or to
Yeah, because the negative is the danger. See, the positive is not dangerous because it's all happy and the good stuff. The danger is in the negative side. Yeah, so if you focus only on, it's like it's great to go to the jungle, but you better take the precautions that you need to take with you when you go there. So you're quite happily prepared to ignore the negative because that's what you've done most of your life. Because you were forced to do it as a kid, because if you focused on the negative elements, it would have caused a reaction with your parents and a bigger conflict than was there at the time. So there's an analogy that everybody's got dead bodies in their garden. Yeah, things that they buried underground that they didn't want to look at a lot more. And I want to get back to the list. But I did something very similar to you, and this is why we can relate about this, and the communication makes sense. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I learned a lot from working one-to-one with people. I started in the past to interview a lot of people about their experiences and see what I could learn from them about their experiences. And I realized that they were blind. Most people are blind to most of what is happening in their life. And then I realized if that's true for them, it's probably true for me. And so what I did was I interviewed my parents, and I recorded the interview. And I interviewed my mother, specifically I interviewed my mother and father separately. And what I discovered was two completely different histories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did they live together?
Yeah, yes, yeah, they're still together today. But very damaged people as a result of what they did to themselves, which then they did to each other, and oh dear. But it's so many people have a Christmas card existence. Christmas is coming. It's the family Christmas photo. Everything looks perfect, right? But the truth is the truth is that's bollocks. Okay, the truth is it's just so not true, because a real family Christmas picture for most people would show the hardships and the troubles and the struggles that make you strong. But the real family picture would be like blood coming out the mouth, and an arm hanging off, and kids pulling parents' hair out and fighting with each other and screaming and shouting, and because life is a struggle to get things right. It doesn't mean that it's always difficult. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that the picture perfect idea of how things should be is usually very far away from reality. Let me share with you what screwed me up when I was a kid. What screwed me up when I was a kid was watching romantic films or semi-romantic films, right? Because life is not any one of those semi-romantic films. It's just completely unrealistic picture of what you actually need to survive in life. You take any romantic comedy, and both the male and the female role should be in therapy, in my opinion. Right? And where do you get and just for me, like where did I get my ideas about what relationships should be like and what life should be like? It was from my parents, from my close friends, and from their parents, and from the media in society, and all of those were extremely bad examples of how to do things. We find balance by realizing that those are extremes which are unsustainable. Yeah, those are extremes which are unsustainable, and they're unsustainable because they lack basic value and morality, right? Because the happy romantic film has no real value because it's fantastical, and the
magic.
the adult film has no morality or virtue within it. So that's an unrealistic way to live as well, and so a lot of society is simply the message that everything is okay, you can do what you want, it's not a problem. But the truth of the matter is that is untrue, that you can't just do whatever you want. because everything has some kind of consequential effect in life. Just as there are 86,400 seconds in a day, the way that you act through those seconds determines the quality of life. And if you don't have virtue, value, and morality, and some kind of ethical context within those seconds of your day, you don't have anything within your life. So, well, what this means is that for people who are realizing this later on in life, it's looking back and saying, well, I had these guides and they didn't guide me.